Hello there and welcome. Good afternoon. Sorry I'm running 2-3 minutes late. At the last second, I realized my glasses needed a cleaning so I could see out of them. You know how that gets on a busy day. Oh my gosh, don't we have some interesting stuff to talk about today? We are going to talk about all the ways your resume needs to change if it is going to work. Your job or your resume, let's rephrase that. Your resume has a singular job, and yes, it needs to present you well. It needs to do a whole host of things, but its singular job is to deliver the interviews that you're right for. If your resume is delivering the interviews you're right for, very likely don't need to change it. If it's not delivering the interviews that you know you are right for, or you're not securing those potential offers that you're right for, probably need to change a little something on the resume. Let me bring my screen up here a little bit. Welcome. There we go. So as we start today, I want you to think about a couple things. Really, this is about taking control, and we're going to take back control on the resume. That's the beginning of really talking about your whole career narrative. Now, we have a few lectures going on. Of course, they're all over on my SelfRecruiter.com website if you want to see when they are. They all happen generally Tuesdays at 5 o'clock and Thursdays at 12 noon. A couple little variations here and there, but that is pretty much what you can expect. And of course, they're all listed over on my calendar, broadcasting right to Facebook and also over to my YouTube channel. So today, of course, as you see up on screen, is Resume Renovation. On Thursday, 12 noon, I'll be back right here, same place, with my how to build your professional network with LinkedIn and how to use it for your job search, how to really turn your LinkedIn into a showplace for your career. Then next Tuesday, I'll be back here at 5 p.m., same time as today, with my social media marketing and job search lecture, all the ways that social media marketing can make your job search much, much easier. And then next Thursday, 12 noon, is my Supercharging Your Job Search. It's really all about how to organize and manage your job search so it is much, much more effective. Well, let's jump right in today. Resume Renovation. You know, when I was picking this title, I thought renovation really hit on the challenge. Let me just get a little bit of sip of water here. You know, when we think about a renovation, what are we thinking about? Breaking down the walls, tearing it down to the studs? Well, that's probably what you need to do to your resume. You've probably been telling your story the same way for so long. Either you or someone that's very perceptive with an outside view has to take a look and really reset the whole narrative for your career. And that requires not just a little paint, a little bit of fabric on the walls. That requires breaking it down to the studs. Let's re-architect the resume. You know, if we're going to solve our resume issues, you know, a lot of people think, oh, just if I had a better looking resume. Well, absolutely. A better looking resume does represent you better, does position your brand in a different way. But really, resolving resume issues takes more than that. It's not simply typesetting. Oh, I'll get nice typesetting. Yes, nice typesetting does help. By the way, I should mention I have a full pre-press background if typesetting is important to you. But that alone will not solve your resume problems. What you need in addition to that is to solve the story problem. And likely it's going to take a little bit of a paradigm shift compared to what you have been doing. And of course, in today's world, almost 1 year in right now to the pandemic, that means you're going to also have to showcase how easily you can work remotely. And even your outreach process in job search is a demonstration of how you might have attention to detail, what your follow-up might be, how much less friction it is to get something done with you than maybe one of your competitors. Now, the working remotely, engaging remotely, that's difficult. I don't know if you're watching live right now or you're watching on replay, but my gosh, I'm engaging with you right now, and yet I don't actually see you. And that means it takes a lot of confidence, a lot of thought, a lot of where should I put a pause, and do I feel confident enough to have a pause? Well, you're going to have lots of those type of things when you try to get yourself up, ready to go out there and grab some remote position where you're supposed to have distance yet engage and be wise and convey all the expertise you have built in your career. If you haven't worked remotely, you've certainly done things in a remote way. Look at what's up on screen here. You may need to go back and tell your story in a slightly different way, utilizing off-site vendors or managers or team members, or sometimes it's customers, or who knows what it might be, maybe even a partner organization you might be doing something with. all of those are demonstrations of working remotely. Maybe that was one tiny piece of what you did, but of course that has to come to the forefront so they understand. Now, if you don't have those things, or we don't have enough of those things, maybe you have experience with speaking or presenting. Maybe you've done it on conference calls. Maybe you've done it webinars. I hope there's some good video. Maybe you've spoken at conferences, and my gosh, I hope there's some great still shots that might help with a sweeping visual over on the LinkedIn side. Be sure to maybe come back Thursday to really understand how to turn your LinkedIn profile into a three-dimensional sales brochure. Naturally drives the reader to a singular conclusion. My gosh, if I hire that person, work with that person, best business decision I'll make today. So we may have to go back and talk about some of that, but all of it, as I said before, it's this earthquake in storytelling. You're so stuck in a pattern of doing it one way, we're going to have to do it a very different way. Now, if you haven't seen me speak before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. So, if your resume is not elevating your brand, is not delivering the interviews, or if your LinkedIn profile showplace for you is not the three-dimensional sales brochure it really should be based on the value you've built for organizations, gosh, I know a pretty good coach for you to work with that can really build a dynamite one for you. One other piece of my background, which I just mentioned earlier, which does factor directly into today's lecture, and that's before all my time in recruiting, I ran a pre-press service bureau. And that simply means I really do have the deep understanding of line and type and spacing and how that affects your value coming off the page or coming off a digital platform like LinkedIn. So let's get to the real advice. Now, a lot of the ideas are in my book. We'll let you take a look at that on your own over my website, over on Amazon, some other places to get it. Couple of the resources that will help you how your resume does not become resume roadkill. This is a piggyback article onto today's lecture. Will help further what I teach you today. This is over on my LinkedIn profile. Also, how to supercharge your job search. And of course, that lecture is coming up next week as well. And how to avoid the biggest mistake in job search. And really that is time mismanagement. The only resource you actually have as a job seeker, and most job seekers squander it away. They squander it away by sitting on the internet, looking at job postings. And to me, that's pure tragedy. That is not job search. That is, say, one of 15 different avenues that could potentially produce your opportunity. And yet, if you're only, well, I'll just sit here and I'll just keep looking at job postings. I'll just keep looking at job postings until what? Your future sails right by you? We have to do some other things. And that's next week's Supercharging Your Job Search lecture. It will help you a lot. Of course, if your LinkedIn needs work and you don't want to wait till Thursday, right on my website, halfway down the page, selfrecruiter.com, you can see my whole LinkedIn lecture, make me large, make the slides large, whatever you want. Really, you could use it as a step-by-step tutorial if you didn't want a true expert to build it out for you. Now, today's lecture, and really every lecture that I give, is about becoming a self-recruiter. How is it that you can be this one great recruiter that represents just one great candidate, which is you? And at the same time, you're also going to have to be the cheerleader, the strategist, the person that picks yourself up by the bootstraps, all of those things. Of course, we're going to begin to build our network in a different way. That's really Thursday's lecture on LinkedIn. But also it requires keeping one eye on the toughest competitor imaginable. You know, those 4, 5, or 6 people that they're going after the job. They're going after that person. You can beat those people very, very easily. You cannot beat them if you stick your head in the sand. If you stick your head in the sand and don't prepare to beat them with a little strategy, a little planning, they will beat you every time because of the sparkliness, the shininess, the mint imprimatur they seem to have. So let's think about those tough competitors and how we're going to beat them. You know, we all would like to see that job, go after the job, maybe get that job if it really only worked that way, if it was that easy. Everybody's sitting home doing the same thing you're doing, hitting that darn button. And let's just be really clear. Almost never says apply. Almost always says submit, all capital letters, until we're so submissive. It's like a Friday night waiting for that phone to ring. No, it's going to ring. It's going to ring. When it does, it'll be a telemarketer. It's a little bit of a rut that we're going to have to get ourselves out of that leaves us in some pretty unhappy places. Now, you know, when I would give these lectures to a live audience, of course, it's pandemic time, so we have to give it remotely now, but my gosh, people would go, that's not very uplifting. Well, let's see here. Not uplifting. Why is it here? Because it's part of the human condition. And some of these things can hold you back if you don't acknowledge them and let them go. So, if there's something in the past we shoulda, coulda, woulda, okay, let's adjust something going forward and then quit looking in the rearview mirror, because your opportunity is just ahead and you're going to miss it if we're stuck. So let's get over what's holding us back and have a clear vision for our future. Now, we need to think in terms of not the usual customer expected, but these things, the more unusual, unconventional, unexpected, even in terms of resume. Let's talk about that for a second. It's not a secret that I work with clients. If I am reinventing a client's resume, there is not a single sentence anywhere on the resume. Why would I put a sentence on a resume in a world where people don't read? Now, I used to have to say that at the library almost week after week, or every other week after every other week, and wait for the lightning to strike me. Didn't happen. Terrible thing to say, by the way. But no one will read. So if no one will read, why would you have sentences or paragraphs? Excuse me. Your job is to simply be persuasive. How are you going to essentially understand how to convey value? Do you really even understand why a resume still matters? I mean, aren't we in the digital world now? I mean, does that thing really matter? Well, it does. It's part of how you first take control of the discussion about you, plant that first seed of how they might think about you before you tell, let's say, a deeper story on the LinkedIn side. But let's think about the actual challenge behind the scenes once you do hit that darn submit button, if you did. By the way, I am not a fan of hitting the submit button. If you're one of my clients and I find out you're applying online, I'm really not happy. I understand you're going to apply for some things online. I understand. But if this is something important to you, really, I don't want you to apply online. What I want for you is for you to reach right out to the decision maker, engage them, capture their imagination, inspire them. And that happens through direct outreach, which I teach in the LinkedIn lecture, which is on Thursday. So come back. Resume in terms of number, if you didn't listen to me, you hit the submit button, what happens? Well, first off, you have to understand it's 1,000 to 2,000 resumes. If you're pursuing a decent job, that's 1,000, 2,000 resumes being sent in. I did not say 1,000 to 2,000 qualified candidates. Actually, probably 90 to 95% of these are certainly not right for this particular role. Why are they here? You know why? Because they see a great job. Oh, that's a great job. I bet you they have a job for me right around that one. And they throw their resume in. And that ends up with 1,000, 2,000 resumes, some of which are very nice, but completely not right for this role. And very quickly we start to zone up. I can't even get through these 1,000 to 2,000. And yet you still don't have the real big picture. Who can read? Well, we know they don't want to, but who can read 1,000 emails, 1,000 resumes, 1,000 cover letters? I don't believe anybody can, and still do their own work, but we're still too close. We have to back up. We have to take a bigger view, because we're not getting the whole picture. If you happen to be responding to a recruiter, and that's an internal recruiter or an external headhunter, I don't really care. If they have that recruiter title, they tend to work on 10 open jobs at the same time. So it's not 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. It's 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. Who can read 30,000 pieces of messaging? I don't believe anybody can. And that's where those darn applicant tracking systems. Oh, I got a tag on my ear, just like a little animal out in the forest. I don't think we really want to be tracked that way. And I don't think that's really the right way to be hired. That just leads to a gigantic sifting process until we get to some milquetoast version of what might be acceptable. Rarely the exceptional individual who's probably already in private conversation with the decision maker, bypassing HR. In terms of your resume, really you have seconds before they make their case in their mind about you. And the trap is simply, oh, I'll be perfect. I'll be perfect. You know what? I'll be cookie cutter, interchangeable, perfect, right up and down the line. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Really? That's what you'd like to be? Cookie cutter, perfect, interchangeable? If you are cookie cutter, perfect, and interchangeable like these folks, I'm going to pay you less. You don't want less? Okay, the person next to you is taking less. No, somebody in this line is taking less, and I'm getting them for less. So you have to be, yes, cookie cutter, interchangeable, perfect, and at the same time, somehow exceptional, special, and different. If you're not both, you don't get the right level of job offer or the right carving out of the more important responsibilities for you. And also, you're not going to get the right compensation package because you're interchangeable and I can take less. Now, I don't want to set the wrong expectations about today's lecture. You're not going to, well, you're probably already at home, so you're not going to stay home after the lecture, work 2 hours, have your brand new resume. No, what you'll have is your first iteration of your new resume. Very likely it's going to take 4, 5, 6 iterations of the resume to get to the right version. Don't stop too soon. I'll show you how that works as you go through each version. So just remember, small changes change perception. So let's go into your story and find out what those small items are. Those items that you probably tossed away or forgot or let slip away over the years. Oh, that's nothing. Oh, that was so long ago. Oh, that doesn't matter. Because you're not thinking about how to build an incredible story with just a few right story elements. You can't really even do that until you go back and rediscover your own story. So what is your story? You ever go to one of those stores that the day you want to go, they're all closed. You can tell they're in there, but they've got some paper up over the door. They're like closed for inventory. They got to count things. Yes, they have to count things to see what walked out the door without being paid for. What's the actual inventory we actually have? You're going to have to do the same thing. By the way, if I'm working with a client, I do this exact process. I take about a 90-minute block of time to do a deep dive interview. You should do the same thing if you're doing it for yourself, where you simply interrogate, cross-examine. Now, was there school before this? What did you do after this? Were you doing extra things beyond? You have to dig. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you'll come up with 8 or 9 pages of notes. That's about what I come up with my clients. 8 or 9 pages of notes all about you. And every single thing on those pages is going to be emotionally important to you. And there's the difficulty. You can't fit 9 pages of notes into a resume, not in any worthwhile way. So we have to think about a few things. We have to think about why they're going to hire us. Really, there's only 2 reasons you are ever hired, assuming you're capable and qualified for the role. I do not hire you because you're capable and qualified. Let's be clear. I wouldn't hire anyone that I didn't think was capable or qualified. That goes without saying. That is a foundational bare minimum. Has nothing to do with my decision. That has to do with whether I see people. How are you interesting? What makes you tick? What drives you? That's the reason I hire you. So my gosh, that could have something to do with your work life, could have something that has nothing to do with your work life. And yet, gosh, you get hired because of that. Now, years ago, let me give you a little anecdote. Years ago, I had a client, marketing background, fantastic marketing background, all this nice career progression I can see, and yet some earlier iteration of herself before marketing, she became a certified locomotive engineer. Choo-choo train, choo-choo. Certified locomotive engineer. You better believe, bottom of the resume, right below the degrees, 7-point bold, certified locomotive engineer. Boom. Got so many interviews. At first we think that's a giant turd that's on our resume. Oh, get that off. And we realize now that is the reason I got a whole table full of qualified people here. Tell me something interesting. If you're a 4-time marathon runner, I want to see it, even though it has nothing to do with your work. Why are you interesting? What makes you tick? That's going to get you the interview, and that's going to help you build chemistry and give you a platform to tell your story about why you are qualified, and that's going to help you win the day. So let's go back to those notes all about you. We want to think about all the things that create a brand. I don't have to read these things up here. You can see them. But these are all the things that separate you from other people. Now I need to think about how to filter all that through the singular question, because I have 8 or 9 pages of notes. I've got to distill this down. Which items rise to being one of the best reasons why I'm going to hire you will assure me that it's the best business decision. So as I'm thinking about this, maybe I have to start with a highlighter, and maybe my notes, I simply go through the highlighter. Ooh, get hit with the brick in the head again. Go through the notes with the highlighter, being very stingy. Highlight, just the nuggets of gold, drop of perfume, ruby, diamond, emerald. And then you have an idea of what has to make the resume. The rest of that content, which is the bulk of the 8 or 9 pages, you got to filter through that question. Now, up on screen here is a great resume. I was presented this at the New York Public Library. Someone came up to me right after the lecture and said, I've been told all I can expect is more of this. I presented this. I'm like, what is it? And I'm like, now, if you've seen me before, you know I have a lot of passion. I have a lot of adrenaline running by the time I get to the end of the lecture. Normally, I have a coffee, but I'm well caffeinated today, so I have some water for 5 o'clock. And that was my state when I was presented this. And yet right away, I'm about to fall asleep because, I got hit in the head with this brick of text. I'm thinking, I better ask a question so I don't fall asleep. What would you like to do? I'd love to be in events. Oh, good energy. Have you ever been in events? Ouch. I'm me with my background, and I didn't really detail all the background out for you, but 7 or 8 years in outside recruitment as a traditional headhunter, 3.5 years as the national trainer for 100 office recruiting system, training people how hiring actually works, not the way people think it works, but how does it actually work. Ended up being VP over all 100 offices before really going out and doing what I do now, working one-on-one with clients over the last decade, really helping them elevate their brands and really being seen as the standouts they are. So, gosh, this brick in the head does nothing for me. And with that, my background, I couldn't see it. Now, even if I zoom in, it says right there, events coordinator. Oh, says right there, says right there. I can't see it. I can't see it. No one can see it. All they could actually see is impressive law firm. And by the way, there's law firms and there's law firms. Ooh, law firm. Impressive money. Okay. And they saw another one or two down the page and they go, oh, you're a law firm person. More law firm for you. That's all I can think about you. Why don't you tell a different story? This is the same exact background told a different way. You know what we didn't tell? All the boring, dull parts of the story that we didn't need to hear. All the parts of the job that this person very likely never wants to do again. And now you see a good example of absolutely no sentence structure whatsoever. Clearly communicates every single reason why this person would be interviewed tomorrow in events. Oh my gosh. Coordinated photo shoots and did events at the Heller Gallery, Guggenheim, Lincoln Center, Met. My gosh, why don't you tell that story? You'd be hired tomorrow. Well, I mean, I just didn't do that. I mean, I did the RSVP, the catering, the speaker wrangler. What speaker wrangler? Who are these speakers? Oh, Ted Koppel and Mary Matlin and James Carville, Tom Brokaw, Charlie Rose. Well, some of those names, of course, we need to update. Think about transformation. That's dramatic change, almost like the snake shedding its skin or the worm turning into the butterfly. You're going to have to go through that sort of transformation because we're this product and we are going to have to give ourselves permission. Now, I talk about this a lot in my lectures lately. In reality, I'm shy and introverted, but you're going to have to give yourself permission to be as audacious as you need to be. You have to represent your product. And you have to be the sparkly, shiny product that is desired, not the humble, little, nimble, back on the shelf product that no one's really going to buy. Not that world. That's how you create engagement, although it's much closer to this type of engagement. Small changes change perception. That's your job. So back to personal branding. Just a reminder again of everything that can separate us out from others and how we're going to create that on the resume itself. Before I show you in detail what I'd recommend, I want to take you through just a handful of resumes that I just grabbed off the internet. So careful where you put your resumes. These were up on Pinterest. Someone was collecting resumes. And I thought, oh, I like resumes too. What do you have? And they collected a few together. They had some really interesting things. Now I'm going to pull these center stage so they're a little bit larger so we can talk through these real quick. Now, Kelly here, fresh, smart, good-looking design says so right there. But, if you take a look at this resume suffers really from the same thing that most resumes suffer from, and it's an information architecture problem. I don't know if I should be going down this left column first, left to right. How am I supposed to read this? And really, I lose the story very, very quickly. It doesn't really work here. Julia. Look at what's written at the bottom of this page. Let me come up on screen. I'll come up on screen a little bit smaller so you can see it here. What's up on this page over here? Julia. Who said the name had to be at the top anyway? Well, I'll say it. If someone needs to say it, I'll say it. subtitle of my book is Changing the Rules. There are certain rules you cannot change. This is one of them. By moving the name to the middle, what we've done is we've exacerbated the same type of information architecture problem. Information architecture may sound scary, but it's as simple as you have a big building. You just can't build it. Someone has to actually decide every little thing in the building so it all functions together. Same thing on a resume. What if they only read 15% of yours? No, they'll read 30% of yours. No, 10% of yours. Which 10, 15, 30% would you like them to read? Because that's your responsibility. This presents an information architecture problem. And actually, if you look closely, the only thing I can really see are the reason I would not hire you. Let me come full stage for this one. Dates, although dates are expected, dates are never a reason I hire you. Dates are only a reason I do not hire you. So if you think about a traditional I pattern for a resume, it's name, employer title, education. It's a reverse half moon. Why would you put the dates anywhere in that range where their eyes are if it's a ruling out factor? So move them to the opposite end as far away as you can get it. Maybe even a little smaller, certainly not bold. Oh my gosh, they're bold here. I'd probably like to see it too. So Julia, no, that doesn't work so well. Martin here. Well, kudos to Martin on his brand. I get it. I see it. I can feel it. Now, I'm not sure it's worth 25% of the entire real estate to tell me his name and contact information. That doesn't seem like a really good investment. And again, an information architecture problem. Am I supposed to run down this blue column and then the one next to it, or back and forth? How's that supposed to work? And if I just back up, all I can actually see is education, internship, and personal skills and gimmickry. Those are simply labels that have nothing to do with your value. And that's all I can absorb about you. And that becomes a problem. I feel no value. We're this product and we have seconds for them to be inspired, to have interest. Yeah, the capable and qualified, but don't forget, it's the what makes you tick. It's the running the marathons. It's community involvement that you may be doing that's interesting. Habitat for Humanity. Wow, I can't wait to talk about that. Or certified locomotive engineer, whatever it might be. We each have something different that's still interesting that we may consider the turd for the resume. We're going to have to shift our thought process and understand how you get people interested. So for more clarification on resume LinkedIn, even though this is the resume lecture, these are related marketing documents about you. Your resume, in my view, is catching or piquing the interest, that typical first point of, oh, interesting. Capturing the interest. LinkedIn to me is the polar opposite. And that is, how does this short, concise telling of your background become a three-dimensional sales brochure all about you that naturally will drive the reader? Its job is to convince them that you are the very best. Their gut instinct about you is right. And both of these documents together accomplish how to influence them. So let's go back to this troublesome one that we started with. We're going to zoom in and show you a few different things here. Of course, even the zoom in doesn't really solve much here, but you're going to realize your resume and fixing it and the branding side of it, it's about clarity and influence. And that is clarity of your career path and what the story really is, and influencing the value level that you've built as a product. So if we do it the right way, they're going to feel both of these things coming off it. And of course, this is the after effect where you suddenly just feel it. I can just absorb it. It's just there. It's amazing. I want to just engage with it right away. Of course, it's closer to that type of engagement as we talked about. So resume renovation details. What are we going to do to your resume? Well, we're going to come back to each one of these. We're going to go pretty quickly, but coming right back. You are a product too. Your resume, the new definition, your resume's goals, the understanding stacks of resumes. That's if you don't listen to me and you do hit that darn submit button, what really happens? And the 3-second test for resumes. Back to the beginning. When a company chooses to hire you, they're really buying a product, or at least they're buying your time and talents. And we kind of get that part now, even though we may have been uncomfortable with that in the past. So we're going to have to think about, do we want to be this store brand product where the coloring on the label is just a little bit off. The taste is just a little bit off. Price is very good. Price is very good. Other things a little bit off, a little bit off. Or do we want to be that national brand, the Coca-Cola, the Folgers, the Kellogg's, whatever the big brand is that you might like? Which one draws more funding? Which one draws more interest? Which one gives better satisfaction when they taste it? Which product you want to be and how you're going to position yourself. Now, resume, the new definition, takes a lot of ink to write this down. I hope you're ready. A simple sales sheet to create desire. Now, a few years back, I found myself up on stage with the Reverend Jesse Jackson at Rainbow Push Wall Street Project and pinching myself, oh my gosh, how did I get here? How did I get here? And, I had been invited with several other career coaches. We were going to have a roundtable discussion. And then they said, oh, we're also going to give you, besides the Q&A, we're going to give each of you 12 minutes. I'm like, 12 minutes? What will I do with 12 minutes? You know what? I can do a lot with 12 minutes. What I decided in analyzing my audience, my father was a Catholic deacon, so gosh, I saw him in the pulpit every Sunday. I thought that this audience needed a little bit more of an energized evangelical approach. So I exploded with information. I gave a 12-minute motivational, just tour de force pitch with 40 slides running behind me nonstop. Not static like these every few seconds, just nonstop, everything tied together. And you know what? I got the very first question, and I got 30 to 35% of all of the questions. Good and bad in life happens all at the same time. That was the same week my father was passing away in hospice. I was traveling down to Florida on the weekend, seeing my dad, and he was so excited about what was going on for me. He was like, oh my gosh, how did these things happen for you? It's amazing. It's amazing. Traveling back that particular day, I had 2.5 hours sleep, stressed about all the different things. And yet, because I'm standing in front of a wall, knock, 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 we have to think about opportunities knocking. You have to be ready. This simple sales sheet that creates desire, if you want to experience one, maybe you go wander by a Best Buy or some store like that. And when you do, you're going to wander in there, and they make some very large things toward the back, 71 inches, 81 inches, 115 inches, these very large televisions. Never going to be able to afford that 115-inch one. But unless you are single, that is not an individual decision if you like your life. So they make something called a sales sheet or a tear sheet. Nice glossy little pad of single sheets, glue on the one end. It feels so satisfying to zip that glossy sheet off the thing. And really, it's a cheat sheet to take home. Every reason why our life will be totally different. I will do my chores on the weekend without even being asked if we had this television. Life-changing. Everything I need to go sell the television. That's what your resume needs to become. You give your resume to people that are not very good at then walking down the hall and reselling you. Your resume has to become a sales tool that will help them sell you to the next person that you don't get to speak with. Simple sales sheet that creates desire. Your resume's goals. Now, this one's pretty simple. Let's be clear between goals and mission. Its mission in life is to deliver the interviews that you're right for. Its goals are a clear, clean, straightforward format, a format really where the information itself jumps off the page for the reader. Certain things you think are going to be of greatest interest, not the ones you want to tell, of greatest interest to the decision maker, are formatted in such a way that can just easily be absorbed. Boy, look at that word, absorbed, not read, absorbed. Of course, we have to clearly inform by educational background. Understanding stacks of resumes. Now, what does happen if you didn't listen to me and you hit that darn submit button? Well, your resume is going to go off toward a gigantic black hole in space called the data warehouse. If it reaches the data warehouse, kiss that resume goodbye, not likely to see that again very soon. But on the way to the data warehouse, it will stop in front of a person, and they're going to stack up right here. And this is your chance. This is your chance. Human beings going to look at you. So they're going to sort you into one of three stacks from this quick look. What is this look? There might be somebody in here. That's the good stack. Stack number one. Maybe. But I have to come back and take another look. But they don't come back and take another look. They don't come back and take another look because they have this whole incoming river of new resumes. Why would I go back to these folks that couldn't quite convey their value to me the first time? when I have all new exciting people that I can look at. Ends up being a thanks but no thanks stack, which is the same thing as stack number 3. So the secret that you may not like is really the time allotted to making this value judgment about you. Now, I know trainers typically will exaggerate ever so slightly to try to drag you over the finish line. This is not an exaggeration. You have literally 3 to 5 seconds of a look for your resume before you're in one of those 3 stacks. Your first goal is to get yourself into stack number 1. If you don't get yourself into stack number 1, not likely to ever really read the resume, not likely to really ever read the cover letter or email or anything else if you're not into stack 1. First goal. However, we have a problem today. When we're starting with 1,000 to 2,000 resumes, and even when you make stack 1, now there's 50 people in stack 1. So let's go back to the initial question. Who can read 50 resumes, 50 cover letters, 50 emails, and do all their own work? I don't know anyone. So there's another secondary sorting process. This is where LinkedIn comes in. They're going to grab your name. They're going to go over and look at you on LinkedIn. You're not on LinkedIn. Out comes the resume over to stack 2. I mean, is this even real? You don't exist on LinkedIn. You don't exist in the real world any longer. Must exist there these days to have any credibility. But you're on LinkedIn, but it's a placeholder. That's like a name and there's like a couple titles. There's really nothing here. Out comes that resume over to stack 2. You didn't really even think about the challenge. You didn't think about the function of what your resume should be doing, what your LinkedIn should be doing, how they work in concert together. Nobody likes the last example. Wait a minute, you're on LinkedIn, but wait a minute. It's exactly what I have on the resume. Out comes the resume over to stack 2. I am looking for you to drop the other shoe, to further persuade me. Tell me the rest of the story I haven't seen yet, to convince me my gut feeling about you may be right. None of that happens, though, unless we get ourselves into the first stack. Then when they do narrow down to 10, maybe 15 that they can seriously look at, then those resumes do get read. Then those cover letters do get read. So you got to attach a cover letter, even though most people will never see it until you make the final cut. And they're going to go back and read your emails. So every piece of your communication becomes very, very important. Resume itself, it's a single sheet of paper in all cases. You see how unhappy I am if it's 2 pages? If it can't be 2 pages, or if it can't be a single page, it's simply that you don't know how to edit. Now, I was telling a little bit of this story over at the Department of Labor, over in the Varick Street office a couple of years back. It was actually the LinkedIn lecture, but resume comes up just like LinkedIn comes up in this lecture. And I happened to mention, single sheet of paper in all cases, and suddenly some guy in the back explodes. He's like, oh, come on. What if you've been a CEO and you got a 30-year career? It's never going to fit. Okay. Take a breath. I hear you. But I don't think your lack of pleasure at my comments is because you don't like what I said about the single page resume. I think it's because you're sitting here going, what am I doing here? How come no one can see my value? Not a surprise. This guy hired me, sends me his stuff. It is 6 pages of my eyes bleeding. I can't even get through it. Oh, you're never getting that to a single page. Boom, like a giant exclamation point. Single page, very impressive. Of course, they're a CEO again. What are we looking at on that single page resume? We're looking at your name, which is your brand, the current or last 3 employers and titles, and we're looking at your educational background. And here I need to do a listening test. I will hear people in live lecture where I'm in the room, and then suddenly I'll hear them right after going, oh, John said just put the last 3 employers and titles. I did? When did I say that? I said what we're looking at. Now, if you asked me a different question, John, what would you like on a resume? Oh, I'm so glad you asked me. What I would like on a resume is for it to be complete from the time you enter the workforce to today. Again, it's a listening test. I said that's what I'd like. You know, if you have a background that goes back into the early 70s in your work life, I don't need to see all that, even though I might like to. I don't need to see all that. You have to manage perception. I cannot think that you may be running out of gas. That's not going to help you either. Now, this 3-second test for resumes. Now, if you have your resume with you, just pull it out. This is just for you. Let me get a little drink here while you're pulling it out. We're going to take a look at the resume when I tell you. And in the time I allot you, you're going to have to look with very fresh eyes. I know this is you. You're going to have to look with fresh eyes as if you don't know this person, which is you. And when I tell you to stop, just rhetorically tell yourself what you know about this person's value. Go ahead and take a look. And stop. And for those that weren't looking at the resume, you saw me do it. That was 1001 all the way through 1005. You are never getting longer than that before you're in one of those three stacks. Most people look up from that exercise and they go, oh, I can't tell you anything. And it's me. When you get done with your first iteration, you're going to sit down. You're going to put it next to the original. You're going to go, what works, what's better, what else can I do? Then you're going to pick it up and do the 3-second test. Right back to the drawing board. 4, 5, even 6 iterations to get to the really right one that elevates your brand, tells the story the right way, and really instills confidence. Don't forget, they're going to hire you because of the chemistry, number 1, above all other things, and confidence, number 2, above all other things than chemistry. And of course, that's if you're capable and qualified, things that should be no matter what. I object to objectives all the time, every single time. I mean, look at this objective here. Let's zoom in here. Maybe we can, another brick in the head. Let's see if we can even zoom in here. Can we zoom in? Yeah, there we go. So high energy. All I can actually read is the word profile. I mean, high energy, and it just zaps the energy right out of me. Oh, high energy events planner, specialist. Can't miss that. Much simpler, much easier. Here's some other ones from some different people. Campaign director, media public relations, community liaison. By the way, I'm a believer that this objective area that I now call the positioning title, it's in the simplest telling, it's 4, 5, 6 words. If you have a more complex background, maybe it's 2 or 3 lines of 4, 5, 6 words, depending on what you're trying to accomplish or what problem you're trying to solve. I have the story behind this resume we're going to talk about in a little bit. Very interesting. Everybody has different challenges, and what you put at the top can get you to sail past some of those challenges. Very, very easy. Or we can go back to this brick in the head that really doesn't do anything except assault people. Doesn't work very, very well. So I want you to think about the fact that a lot of the things that I'm using in storytelling on the new version are right there. They're right there, hidden behind all sorts of things. Lots of inconsistency too. You look at those dates between the two roles, and sometimes we're 2 TO and sometimes we're a dash in between. Consistency is incredibly important. Also says something about your attention to detail. You want to think about how all of the things you may do to the new resume will separate out elements of the story and somehow elevate it from this massive block of text, which is like a big weight tied around your leg and jumping into the deep river. It's going to drag us down. Or it could be light, airy, and work. Or we could go back to the solid weight that's going to kill us. Or we could become light and airy. You know, you're going to have to think about how you're going to move your format forward and how you're going to add as much clarity as you see in this example. Great example, by the way. So as we wait for this animation, which is going just a hair slower than I might like, we're going to wait for this one to clear out so we can go to the next screen. But I don't have to interject here. Oh, there we go. Bottom part of this resume. Now, this person was concerned about getting mature. You know, we all, if we're lucky enough, we do get mature. If we're not lucky enough, we may not get mature. I'd hope to get mature. If we're lucky enough, we may get so mature we want to take a pair of scissors, cut. This person cut Martha Stewart Living off their resume. Oh, that's 93. I don't want to show back to the 90s. I get it. But you'd like to work in events and you're going to cut off Martha Stewart Living? Doesn't make sense. Or House Beautiful Magazine, where you did an event at the Guggenheim, or European Travel and Life magazine, where you did event-related things. Don't cut off the story. Cut off the right parts of the story. Now, here, I promised you a little bit of a story on this one. This is a guy that called me up from the Carolinas a number of years ago. At the time we worked together, he was about 11 or 12 years into his role. And he called me up and he said, you know, I had a great run, 11, 12 years in contract furniture sales, you know, selling like 1,000 desks. I'm so done selling furniture, so done. But every time I send out my resume, they go, but we don't need a furniture salesperson. We don't need a furniture salesperson. I'm like, quit talking about furniture. Of course, my next question was, what would you like to do when you quit talking about furniture? Oh, I want to be in software, hardware, and services. I'm like, that's a great field. Also a field I used to place. They make a lot of money. I'm like, have you ever been in software hardware services? I have, about 15 years ago. I bet you there's someone here today that has the same challenge to sell 15-year-old experience. How are you going to do it? So given that this was 11, 12 years in this one role, this person had almost the whole resume filled up with that story. I condensed it down to this super paragraph that you see. I removed every single reference to furniture that I could. So Price Modern, you may know them as a brand. I did not. Hayworth, certainly did know them as a brand. And of course, I see them and they're very clear. Off corporate office furnishings, there's the 3 words. Not another single mention of furniture. In fact, everything on this list would make the sales manager jump out of their chair. Achieve $50 million cumulative sales to date. Ranked top 10 in revenues every year since 2002. Developed a strong pipeline. This is every single reason, plus connected to the software, hardware, services up in that positioning title that makes them go, oh, naturally, I'd love to have someone in software, hardware, services that could knock numbers out like this. That then allowed us to expand the earlier roles that are just down the sheet where we could show software, hardware, and services. Very, very important. Of course, they're working in software, hardware, services now. Now, this is the bottom of a resume. I thought we could learn something by sharing this with you. In fact, let's bring this one larger for a minute so I can talk about it and you can see a little bit more close up. If you decide to cut part of your background, maybe I'll just come in small. That's it. That's the right choice here. So if you decide to cut part of your background, you're going to have to go, well, where do I start that story? So we said, well, let's start or stop that story with EDS, electronic data systems. Now, if you don't know EDS, they're one of those employers. Every industry has one of those employers that, oh my gosh, they hired you. You must be special. Now, I think in finance, I think we know who that is. Goldman Sachs. There's only one of them, Goldman Sachs. Doesn't matter what you think of them. That's the reputation. EDS has the same reputation. I am sure some of these companies hire some stinkers, but the reputation is you must be pretty amazing. So it's a great place to either begin or end your career story. But look just below that. We have 3 prior employers, and 2 of these 3 prior employers also rise to that same level of stunning. Kaiser Permanente and PwC PricewaterhouseCoopers, same perception. In one quick view at the end of your story, toward the bottom, they suddenly see these 3 dazzling jewels together. They all hired you? Wow, amazing. Let me just mention those 3 prior employers add 17 years of additional background. Anybody here need to be 17 years older the next time you walk into the interview? Not too many of us. Wow, there's 3 of them there. Now, if we look a little bit further down the resume, something to learn from the very, very bottom, the educational piece. I am a big fan of splitting the bottom of the resume. Notice there are 3 universities here, but only 2 of them are treated the same. Degrees are not trumped by something else. So when you look at this University of Maryland, the PMP, not this is your field. I know you're going crazy. PMP, I love PMP. I get it. Let's just come a little bit larger here. I know the PMP is the sell piece here. I also trust that is the cherry right on top of that very expensive dessert. They will never miss it. Got the PMP too. They will never miss it. Oh, put it on the top of my resume. Doesn't belong there. By the way, if you become so enamored with one of your acronyms and you need it to be at the top of your resume, you can get it there with a little bit of a cheat. John Crant, PMP or CPA or whatever your acronym might be. Might be a way to get it up there. Community involvement, interesting piece. Again, think about these things. We have to think about the story, but now we're going to have to think about the format. The story itself, you're going to have to wade through or work with a really good coach to really rediscover the right part of the story. Now, Betty Jo here, full disclosure, she's my cousin, so I pulled off her contact information, that kind of stuff. I figured you didn't quite need to see that. Clarity on the positioning title. It is always the job that you're after. In fact, it's the only part of the resume that I would create that's intended to change all the time. The rest, if it's done correctly, should not need to change. The story doesn't need to shift. You need to shift this positioning title so every single time it's a dead bullseye. Just what I'm looking for. You've got the right one. Pick it up and you cause a gasp in the reader. That's exactly what they want. So that's always the target job. That makes it a little bit easier. We have to begin to space things out. We have to have professional experience, and further down the page, we have to have education. I'm going to give you some sizing. It's not written down anywhere. I would write this part down. For titling like education or professional development, professional experience, those are 7-point bold, all cap. But when you do, it's still going to be black. It's still going to cause the eye to pull too hard. So I like to hit those labels with a little bit of gray so they disappear into the background. Your story comes forward, labels disappear a little bit into the background. And there's 8 points of size in that little tiny arrow before Good Samaritan Village, right after professional experience. Coming up in just a few slides, we'll show you how you make all the space adjustments, but do write down the spacing. Now, Good Samaritan Village, Salvation Army, United Way, those are all the brands. The brands I like at 10-point bold. I hope you notice that the comma, location, and date are not only not bold, they certainly are not 10-point. In fact, in this iteration, they're 7-point. You can have a lot of variety. You can have as much variety as you'd like, as long as you create a rule list, and you must stick to this rule list. Every title is handled this way. Every employer is handled this way. Every extra is handled this way. Consistency is what will give it the breathability, the readability, where people will just go, oh, it just communicates. It just jumps off the page somehow. That is all the work. A lot of it comes out of the pre-press background. Now, we're going to look at the title. Let's look down at traditional employer title. That's more Salvation Army, United Way. We'll come back to Good Samaritan Village for that extra little line that's there. So normal employer title, after the employer line, the brand line, I like 2 points of space. And we'll tell you how to get that in just a minute. So we had 2 points of space right after the brand before your title. And then right the title line itself, I like a 0.5 point less than the brand. That means I like your titles at 9.5 in size. Not bold, because if they were bold, they'd then be fighting in the brain for attention. They have to work in harmony with the brand. So italicize 9 point. Now, 9.5, sorry. I'd like 4 points of space right after the title before your bullets. We're still going to go back to that special line up at Good Samaritan Village, and we're still going to tell you how to make that spacing adjustment coming up. Let's go back and talk about that extra line. We have this nation's largest non-for-profit long-term care organization. Well, this happens to be in Florida. I spent 13 years in Florida before I escaped, successfully made it away. Thank goodness, never going back. Not very often, maybe on vacation. From that experience, I can tell you that every second or third mobile home or trailer park in Florida ends in the word village. Cannot possibly have someone mistaken their brain that your career has gone from big name, right into the toilet. If one of your employers is unknown to the person sitting next to you, whoever they may be, it doesn't matter. If they're unknown to that person, you very likely need this descriptive line. If you need this descriptive line to set the brand level of your employer brand, it's 8 point in size. And yes, it has 2 points of space right after. It's still going to tell you how to get those. Now, our bullet points, of course, you're going to see some red circles popping up here and there. Our bullet points themselves, we can do each bullet set at the same time, one after another after another. So just highlight each of the bullet set. You're going to make it 8.5 in size. When you do, it's going to get a little tight, a little hard to read. It's okay. It's still highlighted. We're going to fix it in just a minute with some character spacing. We're still coming up the screens. I'll show you how to do that. But 8.5 for those bullets, that's going to create a level of readability that everything has a hierarchy. Everything is indented so that really we're serving them up employer title on a silver platter because that's what they'd like. I'd like to see your name, employer title, employer title, employer title. I'd like them to read more, but give them what they're after so it's easier. Add in all the spacing. Now, as far as bullets, I gave you the spacing. As far as bullet points, after every single bullet, it's 1.75 points of space. That tiny little adjustment will take a compact set of bullets and suddenly return the breathability. Now, I want you to think about really all the work it takes to actually format something in a way that removes the work for the reader. That's your job. How do we make a rule list? Not so complex. If there's a rule list, I just stick to it. There cannot be exceptions. Let's talk about something special here. Top of the resume, your contact line should be a single line, single, not stacked up like a layer cake, eating up real estate on a single page resume. What do we want in that single line? We'd like to start with your LinkedIn profile. This is your LinkedIn URL, so they can one click get to it. Follow it by your city, state. Nope, I don't need to know that you live at 123 any street. We don't hire you because of that any longer. I need to know then your email address, followed at the end by your cell phone number. Notice it says cell phone number, not your home phone number. And I don't care that you can't get your cell phone number in your home. So first off, this is set up this way so that if they're not 100% convinced, click on my LinkedIn. I'm going to convince you the rest of the way. If you're already convinced, call my cell. There it is. That's what we want at the top of the page. Now, how do we add space? There's two types of adding space. We can add space between the lines. We can also add space between the characters. So all those places where we're adding points after, we're simply going to go up to format, down to paragraph, and we're going to get this to pop up. Now, here's where you have to look at your own version of Word, and there's about 20 different versions of Microsoft Word. Unfortunately, not much I can say there, but do learn this concept and figure out where these are on your version of Word. When the paragraph box comes up, there should be a section for points after, and you simply enter 2 and hit enter or return, and magically you get 2 points of breathing room right after whatever was highlighted. So I highlight what I'd like, go there and adjust it. Now, if I'd like to add space between the characters, that's also pretty easy as well. Good example might be that contact line. Now, I didn't tell you what size for the contact line. LinkedIn, city, state, email, cell phone number. My gosh, that should be 7 point. And when you make it 7 point, it's going to go like this and be totally unreadable. Still highlight it. So I'm going to go up to format, down to font. And now when the font window comes up, you'll realize I can click this advanced tab and I can either expand or contract the character spacing. So in the terms of the contact line, I'm simply going to expand the character spacing by 1 or 2 or 3 points until it spreads out nicely. And you'll realize even at 7 point, it's completely readable. It is really not font size that determines readability. It is the font size in conjunction with the spacing around it. 4, 5, 6 iterations to get to the right version. Don't stop too early. Your work pedigree. Gosh, that's a strange word. I think of horses and dog food. I have the right word. You may get the 3 to 5 second look at the resume, but I don't think you're still on the same page I am. I'm looking at the quality of these companies, right or wrong, titles and accomplishments, even though I said I wouldn't look at those accomplishments, and the educational background. Here's your proof. Here is the world's simplest resume. Todd Smith, Nestle USA, Director of Quality Assurance. Kraft Foods, I see Quality Assurance Manager. Coca-Cola Company, Quality Assurance Engineer, University of Florida, BS in Agriculture. This is all that's on the resume. I guarantee you it's about the world's simplest resume. And yet everybody watching has some sort of an opinion about Todd. Oh, he's got the degree. That's usually a pretty good thing. Let's see. Oh, I see career progression, engineer to manager to director. That's fantastic. Oh my gosh. These are 3 stunning companies, aren't they? How do you know? Now, I never did work food and beverage, but almost every company out there is messed up beyond belief. A little bit of an internal meat grinder, trying to reorganize, restructure all the time. I imagine these are just as messed up as any other company. But my gosh, how do we judge the brand? Now, if you want to take this a little farther, I'm going to promote you up to the boss. You have to hire the person, the spot that Todd might go into. And you have 2 candidates left for interview spot. Let's see, you have this Todd guy and some other person. Todd and some other person. The other person, by the way, has the same background, has the same University of Florida BS in Agriculture, same engineer to manager to director. But you know what? They did it for 3 food and beverage companies you've never heard of, and there's like a million of those. Let's see, who gets that interview spot? Todd or the other one? Todd. There's no question. Todd gets this interview every single time. That's the value of the brands. Now, value everywhere, but nowhere to be seen. You saw a resume with no bullet points. What you put under those employers and titles has to be achievements, essentially, has to be bullet pointed in a way that it can just jump off the page. And you've got to have as many tangible deliverable items, things that will excite them. And that may be the revenue discussion or the expense discussion, or it's really all somehow about performance. And if you don't have the dollar signs, percentages, or those things to talk about, you're going to have to think about, well, maybe I have to use more descriptive language, things that will pop an image. Redeveloped office workflow. Oh, I like the sound of that. Redeveloped office. I can imagine you doing it. I may have to change my language. But ultimately, you'd like to get it where they just jump off the page somehow. Degrees of degrees. Have you received in hand your college degree? You know what matters here? The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I actually really don't care. Don't mishear that. Education is very important. Get as much as you can without going into any kind of silly debt that we're never going to get out of. At some point, though, even though they're always going to ding you for it, you didn't finish your degree, did you? From 30 years ago? I didn't. But you know what? It allowed me to enter the workforce a little bit earlier than my competitors, and that's how I landed that such and such job, which set me up on this trajectory, which brought me to you today. By the way, when they poke you about those things, that's really about resetting your financial expectations, trying to push those downward. They would not waste oxygen on you if they didn't think, oh, maybe. A few words about designing your resume, although this whole thing has been about designing your resume. It's about moving your brand forward, and that's helping them visualize your career path and your contributions and your value. Of course, informing about educational background. Let's just have a word about Word. If you haven't guessed already, I am not a fan of Microsoft. I would be if they wrote great software, but really they write some of the worst garbage on the planet, in my view. And Microsoft Word is a great example of the worst of the worst. In all these years, they've never, ever bothered to fix it. If you follow all the advice and all the spacing and everything that I just gave you, all this hard work to make your resume perfect, and then you dare send a Word document to anybody, foolish. I would not let a Word document out of my cold, dead fingers. It is never happening. Because by the time it's sent from your computer to another person's computer, well, you have to know what's going on behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, the preferences file that tells it what to look like stays as part of your computer. When it arrives on my computer, it's going to open by my preferences file, which may be very similar to yours or could be a completely different animal. Your single-page resume could now be a full page and a half when it prints out of my machine, or I'm looking at it on my screen because of how it's interpreted. When you're all done, you can see this over my YouTube channel. Check out the video called Headless Horseman. Learn how to convert it over to a PDF, which will freeze it in state. It'll be perfect no matter what computer, what software made it, no matter what computer, what software is looking at it, perfect every single time. And I'll only send a PDF no matter what they ask for. You know, must send Word document. Really? You're not going to hire me if I send you a PDF? Years ago, when I was overseeing the 100 office recruiting system, I also had to evaluate all of the applicant tracking systems. And even all those years ago, they all took PDFs. There's no purpose for the Word document. Take your first step and repeat. Let me just point you toward a couple extras that will help. There's a big article over on my LinkedIn side that will help you, all about cover letter and how you really make that sing and work for you. I want you to think about how you're going to make it come to life. So if you go over to my LinkedIn and click on the articles, you'll see a knock, how to write a cover letter that opens doors, or you can go to SelfRecruiter.com, click on the advice tab, which is also my blog, and you'll see knock, how to open a cover letter that opens doors, and all the mechanics, the structure, everything of how you get the cover letter to sing the praises, connect the dots, and make your case as the very best business decision they're going to make that day. I thank you guys for joining me. Keep in mind, it is a process and it is a creative process. Some people can do it and some people can't. If you need some help creating a really phenomenal resume to elevate your brand, packages are right over my website under the services tab, and have a look. And if you'd like to talk beforehand, send me a quick email and we'll have a discussion. Thank you guys for joining in today. Appreciate it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all those fun things, and share these with your friends. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Have a great one.